have going forward, recent polling showed that there's up to 70% of self-identified conservatives believe that there was this election has been tampered with. It is irredeemable now. That this was not a fair and free election.
No, it wasn't.
So when you have 70% of the conservative base, when you have tens of millions of Americans believing that this was a banana republic election, then the question on the table is twofold. One, what do you do about it now? Because we have constitutional demands on the office of the presidency that are coming up in a matter of seconds. I mean, a matter of moments, right? And then secondly, how do you prevent it in the future? I think perhaps the second question is the most important. Charlie, what do you do about it now? And most importantly, how do you prevent this from happening in the future? Because there's one thing that I know about the left is that if they can get away with it once, they'll do it forever.
Well, first of all, we need to make sure that Joe Biden does not become president of the United States. We need to get the Department of Justice and the Supreme Court to order a revote, which, by the way, is not out of the realm of possibility. What does that say?
North Carolina revote is a win for democracy.
The publication.
The Nation,
which
far
is
left.
Far left wing.
Yep.
They've called for revotes before because of why? Because of voter fraud.
Yes. From the Republicans.
Yes,
from the
Republicans.
I'm remembering
We
this
need
right.
a revote in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia. Nothing less. If we do not get this, if we do not have faith in this entire system, then Joe Biden will not be treated as a legitimate president. And then they're going to finally taste what they've been serving us for the last 4 years. And we're not going to riot. We're not going to do all those sorts of things. But I can tell you this, that when you don't want an investigation into something, I wonder, what are you hiding? That's number one. Number two is this, is that it's long past time that Republicans start to realize that elections are not won on persuasion. They're not. Elections are won on mechanics. See, the Democrats were laughing at the idea of Joe Biden saying that you'll phase out fossil fuels and all that. They say that's not going to matter. You see, we count the votes. We harvest the ballots. We control the cities. We're going to tell people to stop counting in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee that night. Now, mind you, their ideal scenario was not this. Their ideal scenario was Joe Biden winning convincingly, and they flip Senate seats in Montana and Iowa, and it's so overwhelming that the fraud would have just blended in. Mm-hmm. And anyone that would be yelling fraud would kind of look somewhat maniacal, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The fact that this was close, that Trump supporters rose up in such record numbers,
yes,
exposed their fraud in a way that it might not have otherwise. And so people say, well, what do I do? What do I do? You prosecute. You have to put pressure for prosecutions right now. If you do not see voter fraud prosecutions in the next week, your justice system is truly dead. It's that simple. If you can send 15 agents after Bubba Wallace because he has a rope in his garage, you can send 20 agents to this. We read this earlier. On November 4th, 2020, I was surprised to see the numerous new boxes of ballots arrive at the TCF Center in Michigan in the evening. Have you read this? Sworn affidavit. I first noticed these boxes in the distribution area after many of the military ballots had been distributed and processed. I eliminated those boxes because they contain several thousand new ballots. I estimate these boxes contain several thousand new ballots when they appeared. The main list of persons who had registered to vote on or before November 1st was all listed on electronic poll booth. As I understand it, the supplemental sheets were the list of persons who had registered to vote on November 2nd or November 3rd. I observed that none of the names on these new ballots were on the new voter electronic poll book. I saw the computer operators at several counting boards manually adding the names and addresses to these thousands of ballots into, this is a sworn affidavit in Michigan, into the QVF system. When I asked what the possible justification was for counting ballots from unknown, unverified persons, I was told by election supervisors that the Wayne County Clerk's office had, quote, checked them out. I challenged not one ballot, but the entire process, as the names were not in the QVF or supplemental sheets, and because the date of births were all wrong, as being marked 1/1/1900. All of them had the same birthday at the turn of the century when William McKinley was still alive. Where's the FBI investigation into this right now? Where's the FBI investigation? Now, I do have to say, there's a shift happening. People are waking up to this, Benny.
Yes.
Can you comment on how you're starting to see the narrative start to shift?
I believe that you're living through the scariest time in American history right now. What you've watched over the last 4 years, particularly, certainly over the last generation, but ramped up at a rocket ship level speed and pace, has been the eroding and the destruction of American norms and institutions. Why is this important? Institutions are places that hold within them our value systems and protect them. The Department of Justice, the FBI, our intelligence agencies, our law enforcement agencies, Congress, the media. Back when your grandparents were alive, that was their job, to uphold truth in our political class. These systems have been eroded, starting with academia.
We know a lot about that.
We know a lot about that, through to the media, to your entertainment industry. Does anybody watch the NFL anymore? Does anybody watch the NBA? They've done away with that. They've ripped that out from under you. The left has then gone and systematically destroyed Congress. What's Congress's approval rating right now?
8%.
Donald Trump's is 51, but Congress's is 8. What does that tell you?
He won 71 million votes, and we don't know how many votes that Biden won.
And the last institution they had, the cultural Marxists had, was our electoral system. Something that, not since Bush, but really like never widespread has there been like this fraud claim.
Yes.
You talk about 1960 election a lot.
No,
that's famous.
This is the worst.
But this is the worst.
This is a total highway robbery. And you know what frustrates me? It frustrates me when I get these private messages being like, yeah, we should probably stop talking about this right now. Like, no, you're a coward. Resign from politics. This is the fight of the civilization. They stole this from us, everybody. It's that simple. There's no way that you can actually justify all these different numbers. This was a highway robbery.
When you erode the system in which we impart power, because the power is in the people, and we impart it through our voice and our vote, when you erode that system and you rip the faith out from under that system, you truly have destroyed the representative republic that it represents. And so that is a terrifying moment, and it's also why we need to fight this and expose this now, or truly American civilization is on the line.
Ben, you want to put in your IFB? We have a guest joining us from a piece that I read this morning that I really enjoyed, from Scott Hounsel. Scott, welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show.
Thanks, Charlie. So glad to be with you.
Give me 1 sec. I still can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about. Let me see if I can get.
Can you say that again?
1 second. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, Scott. You got it. Okay. No, you got it. So Scott has this amazing piece, everybody, that says, "Excuse me while I call BS in Wisconsin." I've been talking about this for a couple days here, Scott. I want to focus. Can you just first give us your analysis of what happened in Wisconsin and all of the discrepancies? I have this highlighted. For instance, in Wisconsin, data suggests that there are issues that need looking into in 5 counties in particular: Washington, St. Croix, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Dane, Waukesha, and Ozawaukee counties. What happened in Michigan, Scott? I mean, Wisconsin, not Michigan.
So in Wisconsin, you see a trend of data. So anytime you see trends of data, there's a line and it stays on the trend. Those data points fall along that trend line. With these 5 counties, they take off from the trend line. So again, data doesn't trend according to everything. If you take these 5 counties out, Biden averaged a negative 8.5% turnout compared to Obama's 2012 showing in the state. If you add these counties back in, or if you just in these counties alone, we see that Biden outdid Obama's turnout by 15% in one, 16% in another, 20% in another, 30%, 31% in the next, and the last one at 38.39%. These numbers just don't match anything else that happened in the state. They are statistical outliers.
Yeah, so you go through this piece by piece. We're talking about counties that are just miles away from each other that performed complete and polar opposites. Is that right?
Correct. So like in Ozaukee County, you have Biden outperforming Obama by 38.39%. But just to the south, the neighboring county to the south, which is actually Milwaukee, so you'd expect Milwaukee to be worse, if not multiple times worse. And yet Biden underperformed Obama's 2012 turnout by 4.57%. So we're talking about a 42% swing over a course of a matter of miles.
And so you mentioned here, you say in Dane County, which by the way is on our board here, Biden shot past Obama by 20.4%, another strange statistical bump. So are you in Wisconsin currently, or you know the state of Wisconsin pretty well, it sounds like. So Dane County is where the University of Wisconsin-Madison is.
Correct.
It's closed and shuttered mostly right now.
Correct.
So how is it that Joe Biden shot past Obama by 20.4% in the county where University of Wisconsin-Madison is?
We're also talking about 45,000 votes in a state that Biden only won by 20,000 votes. So in just Dane County. So again, it's a huge number that is pretty suggestive of what again, it's talking about organic growth. If growth over a period of time, you could expect a 5 or 7%. Suddenly, when you're talking about 20 points, when everything else in the state lagged, you're talking about synthetic or outside influences that altered that number by that much.
You say here, you go through county by county, and you end with, are you saying it's 100% fraud? You just want answers. Is there any movement right now into getting this understood or verified or at least discovered?
I really wish that I could give you an answer from that. Unfortunately, having not had any contact with the Trump campaign, I don't know exactly whether or not this data is being analyzed and pushed for it. I will say this, there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I on the legal team of the president that are, I'm sure, looking at numbers like this and using these as means of targeting or where to look for fraud, where to look for mail problems or mail ballot issues.
It's absolutely incredible. And so, I mean, if I believe so firmly that they stole Wisconsin from President Trump, and you say this very, very well in this state. Can you just play devil's advocate? What could their explanation possibly be for this? That Joe Biden had a wonderful ground game, that he was such a compelling candidate?
Well, here's the funny part about it, and this is what they're kind of left with two options. One is massive fraud. We committed fraud. The other one is, and that these counties these 5 counties, they're all majority white. So either their argument is that white people didn't show up for Obama, racist white liberals didn't show up for Obama, or fraud. Because there really isn't a middle ground. Where's the other potential here? Again, going back to the fact that these counties are primarily white. They have not had turnouts levels of this in each of these counties. 96% turnout in Washington County, 96% turnout in St. Croix County.
Are you serious?
Yes, 95% in Waukesha and Ozaukee counties. I mean, these numbers are. Having worked in political data for a long time, these numbers are statistically impossible.
Well, I know you work in political data, and I know you're not from Wisconsin because it's Waukesha. I'm giving you a hard time because I'm from Northern Illinois. But no, I'm so glad that you're diving deep into it. And it's you're trying to tell me they have 94% turnout. Now, I mean, is anyone having to answer for this? And so we have this BBC article. Where's my Gabon article here? I have an article here that is written by the BBC. It's actually fascinating. So you should go work for an NGO at the UN that wasn't a corrupt racket, because there's this article written by BBC that says, here's how you find and you spot voter fraud. Oh, here's our Stacey Abrams picture in case you just want to know who we're all working for. So there you go, Benny. So here's the, okay, no, not this one. Okay, here it is. Vote rigging. How to tell the telltale signs. So this was written by BBC, okay? And the BBC would go into third world countries and they would help train the democratic side, the side that wanted democracy, that didn't want corruption. Here's how you spot voter fraud. Okay, here's what they say. Number 1, too many voters. They say you never get a 98 or 99% turnout in an honest election. They say even where voting is mandatory in Australia, they don't even crack 92%. Are you trying to tell me that with non-mandatory voting that there was 94% in what county? In Waukesha, Washington, or?
Waukesha had a 94.56% turnout. In Washington County, it was 96.6% turnout.
I mean, these numbers are impossible.
Right.
But what, I mean, I'm just trying to just do a thought exercise. What would their answer possibly be?
So in the devil's advocate act is that that Wisconsin has same day registration. So you can walk into a polling place, register to vote, and vote in the same day. Those numbers have usually been someplace between 10 and 12% of the total electorate of those days of the day of election. However, if you remember, there was all this push for mail voting. So we'd have to assume that these people didn't register to vote, didn't ask for mail ballots, and didn't cast their ballots, despite the instructions from the Democrats for months that's what they had to be doing. So again, I can't imagine that day of election voting would increase the numbers by this much.
No, it's impossible. And by the way, so you know what the other sign of fraud is if we were going into Gabon to try to find fraud? It says delay in announcing results. That's one of the other ones that they say when you're trying to look for fraud. Large number of invalid votes, more votes than ballot papers issued, results don't match, and a high turnout in specific areas. There you go, my friend. It says right here, high turnout in specific areas with irregularities. So if we were just coming into a third world and we're saying, I wonder like what actually might constitute. By the way, this is taxpayer-funded BBC, which is usually a pile of steaming trash. It's not exactly my favorite document to read. And it says, why would one particular area or one polling station have a 90% turnout while most other areas register less than 70%? Are you seeing that, Wisconsin?
So I haven't been able to get down on the precinct level because most of my data is based upon just what's available from the high-level stuff available from the state. However, you have to assume, like for instance, if you're talking about Washington County, that's the average turnout for all the polling locations.
Jeez.
So again, that's the whole county. So there's probably some places that were 90, and there's probably some places that were 102. And so you've got, again, and when you say 102, this is based upon registration. Yes, they have same-day registration. Yes, it could be more voters than what are registered on the rolls. All this talk. But again, to have that sort of turnout when it's never been that case in the past is definitely an issue.
It's more than an issue. So, Scott, in closing, I want to just reiterate the article. We have a lot of people emailing us asking about it. Redstate.com. Excuse me while I call BS in Wisconsin. It's Scott Hunsell, is that right?
Hounsel. It's like council, but with an H.
See, that's how I totally butchered that.
Hey, I screwed up Waukesha or whatever it is.
There you go. So, great. So, just in closing, you believe with a high degree of certainty there is some funny business going on here in Wisconsin through your data analysis.
Correct. I don't believe that these numbers are organic.
I completely agree. Excuse me while I call BS in Wisconsin. Scott, thank you for joining the Charlie Kirk Show. How could people follow you on social media?
Hound Sizzle, @HoundSizzle on Twitter, or you can just go to redstate.com/Scott Hounsel.
Thank you, my friend. We'll be hawking this. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hound Sizzle. I think that's cultural appropriation.
So, Benny, what do you make of the 102% turnout? And everybody, welcome Isabel Brown back.
Hi, everybody.
Are you okay standing?
Find a place to sit, but we'll make it happen.
We'll go find a chair. So, Benny, 102% turnout in Waukesha County. I never thought I'd be actually correcting people of counties in Wisconsin, but we're in a bizarre week right now.
There's a account that I follow on Twitter of a man who lives in Miami. Hello, Isabel.
Hello, Benny. Yeah.
He's a person who escaped Maduro's Venezuela.
Maduro.
And you may remember Venezuela to be one of the most prosperous nations
Once prosperous.
in South America. And if you wanted to go on vacation in South America, you wanted to go to Venezuela in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then communists took over. How did they take over? This guy had this incredible, and I'll shout out the handle. I'll have to look it up. But he has this incredible story of how you would go to bed, and the candidate who was the freedom candidate, the capitalist candidate, was winning. Mm-hmm. And then everyone would go to bed. And then in the middle of the night, stacks of votes would be miraculously found, and they'd only go one way. They'd only be for Maduro. And you can actually look it up. I looked it up. This is precisely how Maduro got into power. And then he brought communism down on the entire country and famously just destroyed it in less than a generation, 10 years.
Yeah, and Maduro was after Chavez. Yeah, and Chavez did the same sort of thing.
Chavez, sorry, I was flipping them around. Yes,
Yeah,
Maduro
okay.
came after
So,
Chavez.
Yeah,
and
Chavez
died,
nationalized the oil industry and
Correct.
created
My
a lot
mistake.
of the. No,
So the question is, how do you keep America from becoming a third world country? If you go to places like Gabon, you fly in right at the airport. You just understand that the country is corrupt.
Yeah.
You understand that the systems
look,
are corrupt.
I mean, and
bribery is just a way of life.
Yes,
how do you
100%.
prevent America from becoming that? That's the question.
And I say this with no, I'm not saying this insultingly. It's factually. In the third world, a couple $100 gets you whatever you want. I mean, you got to leave a plane. You got to get out of a conversation with a police officer. If you're in trouble, there's nothing that you can't pay your way out of. In America, we kind of think of things differently. Instead, we just give to politicians PACs, political actions committees.
Got him. Right.
Instead of doing that. But
join Charlie Kirk on his next show, Dad Jokes. Political dad jokes.
CharlieKirk.com/support. It's been a long month this week. No, but the point is this, is that if you were trying to, here's what I think really happened here, is this was their plan B. They had this infrastructure in place, and I actually think they scrambled to put it into place as Trump got more and more popular throughout the month
I believe
of
that's
October.
completely correct.
Absolutely.
I believe that the system of rallies that you spoke at, a number of them, and you saw the enthusiasm, unparalleled enthusiasm for this president, even in the time of coronavirus, I think that was a shock to the system.
Yes.
And I believe that they intended on cheating. This is clearly true. But they didn't realize how much they would have to cheat by.
Well, and beyond the rallies, too. I mean, you saw car parades and boat parades with
Yes.
thousands and thousands of people showing up spontaneously. It wasn't planned. It was the night before, people saying, let's go express our support for this president and what this campaign means to us as the American people. So I think that definitely was a shock factor as we got closer to last Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think that they did not anticipate this election to be close, and this was a red wave everywhere.
Everywhere.
California.
Beverly Hills, California.
Yeah,
Yes.
Beverly Hills voted for Trump.
Beverly Hills, California.
Thank
The
you,
fact
MAGA
that
Hulk.
Beverly Hills
MAGA Hulk's been doing
is
great.
red.
Shout out, Stephen Davis.
Yeah, but the fact that we can look at a map and see Beverly Hills as red, but
Yes.
not honestly be able to expect all of these results, that makes you a conspiracy
But not the
theorist.
Iron Range in Minnesota. Beverly
Well,
Hills is red, and the Iron Range is...
So how did the Iron Range not go for Trump?
That's the $1 million question.
It's the million vote question.
Amen to that.
We're going to get a video here. The Washington Post is wrongly saying that the whistleblower for the USPS, we have his name right here actually, Richard Hopkins, recanted his testimony. He actually has said that 4 FBI agents spent 4 hours with him, pressuring him into recanting.
Unbelievable.
We lost the Bureau a long time ago, everybody.
Cool. Chris Ray. Great job, guys. Great job. You could have had Ted Cruz. You could have
Sidney Powell.
You could have had Sidney Powell.
Look, the Bureau is the creepiest division of the government. But going back to J. Edgar Hoover, they've always had way too much power. You guys can email us your questions, freedom@charliekirk.com, as we pull up this video brought to you by James
Who would be
O'Keefe.
your choice for FBI director?
Given the opportunity, Sidney Powell.
Sidney Powell. Okay. Who would be your
Michael
choice?
Flynn.
Yeah. Okay.
Roger Stone.
Your memes would make themselves
Yeah, it'd just
better,
be the meme. Yeah, it'd be the meme. There'd be no memes left. Everyone would just go. They just atomize. You put Michael Flynn in charge of the FBI. Do you see that Pompeo quote today?
Yeah, we have the Pompeo clip. Can we play the
was
Pompeo
awesome.
clip? By the way, I think there's something to this, by the way. I think that they're briefed on some intelligence that
Beyond
actually
what
might.
we
Let's
know.
play Pompeo right here. Play tape.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a mid-afternoon, will also be successful.
May I ask something? someone who played. Did you play sports, Isabel?
Of course, I played.
Okay,
sports.
you played sports. I know this.
Yes.
Okay, Charlie's a good basketball player.
I'm actually a lot better than people think.
Good basketball player.
And also, I'm taller than people think when they meet me.
Well, that makes a difference in basketball for sure.
Not as much in golf.
True.
Isabel's 6 feet tall, so just
Yeah.
extrapolate.
Way
this.
taller
Yeah.
than you think on my social media, you guys.
If you win a game, if you win a close game, how do you behave? Like, this is human
This
nature.
is a great point.
If you win a close game, and maybe you were an underdog, or maybe you were accomplishing something great, you beat your major adversary, the biggest adversary, your biggest rival, you just defeated him, how do you behave?
Celebration and gratitude.
Yes.
Graciously.
Do you immediately run over to the other side and make a list of every player on the other team so that you can make sure that you dox them all on social
Now,
media?
there are a couple NBA players that used to do that.
Do you try and burn down their school?
We call them the Detroit
right?
Pistons.
Do you run over and burn down their school?
Or prevent them from getting a job or getting into
Right.
medical school, or I mean, the list could go on.
There
and
are
on.
like these human nature. So the question is, are Democrats behaving as winners, or are they behaving as cheaters?
They're behaving as cheaters.
Like, what are they behaving like? Like, take a second and think about, like, if you have kids, or if you think about yourself in high school. Like, for me, that was 27 years ago. Like, what did you behave like? There's a human nature element to this. When you look on social media right now, you do not see liberals elated, humble, proud of their work. You do not see the left, the verified left, doing anything other than making lists, building fortresses, like scared, entrenched, worried. If you talk to one of your leftist friends and you're conservative, all it takes is a little poke, and they'll freak out. They'll snap. The Trump Accountability Project, as Charlie's showing me right now, is a perfect example of this. This is not the behavior of human beings who have won anything. This is the behavior of cheaters who are scared to death that they're going to be exposed, and they have to silence you and make you fearful to ask questions so that they can get away with it.
This is such a good point. If they actually won legitimately, they would have behaved like we did in 2016.
Absolutely.
We were happy. We were full of gratitude. I'll never forget. And then I want to play this clip of Richard Hopkins, who's being intimidated by our own government. Which, welcome to the big leagues, Richard. Get in line. I'll never forget. I was up till like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning when President Trump won back in 2016. It was one of the most amazing nights. I was there at the Hilton in downtown New York and went back to our hotel. And I woke up super early in the morning and I met one of our board members for breakfast at like 9 a.m. with like 3 hours of sleep. But we were on just pure joy adrenaline, right? I'll never forget. I went outside and there was a singular protester against Trump. One. And she had a sign that said something really bizarre. It was super New Yorky, right? So it's like kind of like figure it out because it was like kind of indirect. And like these New York protesters always try to be really cute, which is like the sadness has come for our nation or something, right? So I remember my tone being a winner was like, hey, it's going to be okay. He's going to be a president of all Americans. Like, I legitimately was, like, trying to console her. I wasn't like, ha, lib, cry, you're awful. Like, that just wasn't, like, where I was.
Line of the night.
It wasn't like
Charlie just went to the campus and started that 24 hours later.
That was a couple months after they burnt down our country and spied on our president and launched a coup. Then I was like, that's it. What was that girl's name? Go find her. Kidding. Instead, I didn't go up to her. I was like, what's your name? You're on the list.
Where do you work?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where's your family?
Yeah.
Where
It's
do you
not
live?
Yep, that's exactly right.
It's not natural after you win legitimately to
Correct.
behave like this.
Correct.
It's not.
Correct. Did Isabel, did you go make a list of Obama administration officials?
No,
So that you can make
absolutely
sure
not.
that you call up their employers after the administration?
No,
And
and who honestly would behave like that as a normal human being? I mean, this is so far beyond politics. This goes into the general psychology of what it means to understand another human being and have empathy. For those of you that don't know, the reason I was a couple of minutes late this evening was I was doing a Zoom event with one of our chapters in Tennessee, and the number of our students that I've talked to over the last several days who genuinely are starting to think they may never get a job. They may never get into graduate school. They're going to get Fs on all of their papers. They may be expelled from school because they dared to post
it's a
one
legitimate
picture in a MAGA hat. That is unacceptable, and it has
Sickening.
nothing to do with politics. It has to do with this new level of insanity. We thought Trump derangement syndrome was bad in 2016. We have reached entirely new levels of what people are willing to do to each other and what we're capable of over political differences.
Well, and it's not how winners behave. And this is a Turning Point USA chapter.
It is,
right?
yes, indeed.
TPUSA.com, wearing Turning Point USA gear.
Always
Benny's not wearing
rocking
Turning Point
it.
USA gear.
Ouch.
But we'll excuse him on that. But I think that someone said, "Oh, Charlie, I was with you 100% till that Piston dig." Hey, the 1990s Pistons were like the dirtiest team that play. Okay, Isaiah Thomas and all of them.
They were great.
The Bulls were better. Okay.
Ugh.
Richard Hopkins, he signed an affidavit saying that the Postal Service was reversing dates to allow backdated ballots in Pennsylvania. Wait till you see this clip. Play tape.
They were grilling the hell out of me.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm kind of pissed. I feel like I just got played.
And I heard him say to the supervisor that they messed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what did they mess up on? And he told the supervisor that they had postmarked one of the ballots for the 4th instead of the 3rd, because they were supposed to put them for the 3rd.
And so let me make good on that promise right away. Okay, this storm is getting crazy, right? And it's out of a lot of people's control. And so the reason they called me in is to try to harness that storm, try to reel it back in before it gets really crazy. Okay?
I understand.
Because we have senators involved, we have the Department of Justice involved.
LOL.
We have
Trump's lawyers team's gotten a hold of me.
I'm not. Well, I am actually. I am trying to twist you a little bit because in that, believe it or not, your mind will kick in.
Okay.
We like to control our mind, and when we do that, we can convince ourselves of a memory. But when you're under a little bit of stress, which is what I'm doing to you purposely, your mind can be a little bit clearer. And we're going to do a different exercise too to make your mind a little bit clearer. Okay?
Good to go.
So, but this is all on purpose.
Roger.
I am not scaring you, but I am scaring you.
It seems like they were trying to make me distrust y'all. And at the same time, it kind of affected, but at the same time, I was like, no, these guys have had my back since the get-go. So that's why I continued.
Do you think these federal agents have your back?
At this point, no. Hell
Do you
no.
think these federal agents are really interested in investigating fraud?
Honestly, I don't think they are.
And in fact, you heard Weisenberg tell a supervisor they were backdating the ballots to make it appear they'd been collected on November 3rd. You still stand by that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
It becomes evident every single day, more and more evident, how
a police state.
they got Michael Flynn.
But what we have right there, God bless him for recording it.
Yeah.
He should go to jail, this Russell guy. He's a federal investigator saying there's senators involved, the DOJ's involved, the Trump campaign's involved. I'm not scaring you, but I'm scaring
This
you.
literally looks like a CIA interrogation of a terrorist from a TV
Right.
show.
This
That's
guy
what
works
looks
for the
like.
post office.
Right. Wait, I thought just seconds ago we were supposed to respect our noble post office workers. They are the salt of the earth, the noblest. The post office must never, ever be questioned.
And what you all saw right there through audio is a federal metaphorical waterboarding scheme where they go and they metaphorically put your head underwater saying, you better remember better, boy. Remember better. Is this the government that represents us?
Isn't it? No. No.
But this stuff wouldn't, that dog doesn't hunt in
is
Central
happening.
America.
I mean, thank God that he recorded it, but this is already happening right before our eyes.
100%.
Imagine what else we can uncover if more people courageously stepped up and started to leak this stuff and started to talk about it. What they experienced working in these polling locations, working for the United States Postal Service. I mean, we already have hundreds of signed affidavits coming out of the state of Michigan alone, let alone everywhere else across the country. But imagine if we could see every one of those conversations.
Get this tweet up on screen. I think we might be seeing something happen gradually and suddenly, as Ernest Hemingway would say. And we've been seeing it, and we've been having this drumbeat here on the Charlie Kirk Show, and you support us at charliekirk.com/support. It helps make it happen. Breaking right now, President Donald Trump on Twitter. Quote, I don't care what state you're in. This computing voting system is wide open and open to fraud and intervention, according to Lou Dobbs. Here's what President Trump says. True, and wait until you see what's coming. You see that, everybody? Now, mind you, I have found something very interesting here, and our amazing team here that you guys help support confirmed it for me. Benny and Isabel, we read a lot of leftist media, right? You can cut that off the screen. Thank you. We get a lot of push notifications from Huffington Post. Do you know what I found to be really bizarre?
What?
How they've been handling Trump not conceding. Now, yeah, they do their like mockery and all that, but it's actually not. It's not the same flow of information that I thought. Let me prove it to you. The New York Times says, President-elect Joe Biden has already won the election, even if President Trump was able to overtake Biden in Arizona or Georgia or both, or hold on to North Carolina and Alaska, where he's leading, the fact would not change. That's a weird way to word it, isn't it?
I saw that
That's
article, and
that's
it was strange.
Doth protest too much, New York Times?
Who are you going to believe? Your eyes or us?
Your
Who are you
own
going to
brain,
believe?
or have you convinced yourself, going back to that tape we just watched?
Guys,
Silence.
This entire election.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We are the New York Times.
No, but even the way the New York Times worded that is so suspicious. I mean, that's the way the New York Times would. Here's how the New York
Sinister.
Times. Here's how the New York Times should write that if they did it the way they did it with other Trump scandals or whatever. President Donald Trump is destroying democracy and putting America in danger by not conceding to Joe Biden. That's the article that they usually write. Not President-elect Biden has already won, but even if President Trump was able to overtake Biden in Arizona or Georgia or both, or hold on to North Carolina and Alaska where he's leading, the fact would not change. What? Like, that's a weird way.
It's so
like,
bizarre.
That's so un-New York Timesy of them. That's so undogmatic. That's almost is that almost social conditioning their audience to being that there might be some reversals happening soon.
Believe us. Believe us. Believe us. Repeat the incantation. Joe Biden is your president.
So I find
Joe Biden is your president-elect. No, he's not, by the way. For what it's worth, Joe Biden is not president-elect.
Can we just say president-elect is not a position, okay?
It's not.
It's just
Thank you.
I'm president-elect. You're president-elect. Okay.
Thank
it
you.
means nothing. The states haven't voted. Okay. The electors have not voted.
But this hyper focus on this idea of not conceding, I find so interesting, because for the last several days, we all do a lot of media interviews. We're on TV and radio and stuff all the time. That is the #1 topic I've been asked about more than anything else. And I did a live radio interview with media in the United Kingdom yesterday, and all they wanted to talk about was how unpresidential it was that President Trump has not yet conceded, even if there's going to be an investigation, and even if this has to go through the Supreme Court and through litigation. Look, when we really think about this, this is basically the Super Bowl. We're in the fourth quarter. We have one pass left, and there was a flag thrown, and we have to look into this and make sure that all the rules were followed, that everything went through the right processes to understand who won the game. That's it. You don't say you lost the game and then review the penalty flag. You do that first.
That's exactly
so this
right.
idea that we have to concede in order to be polite and be presidential and follow the history of this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
A lot of sports references. I
Lots of
love
sports
this. This
tonight.
is great. Al Gore thought he was president for 37 days.
37 days. And the
so
media did too.
I want to play a couple clips here of the hammer and scorecard from General Thomas McInerney. Did I say that right? I can never pronounce it right. I'm sorry. Email us your questions, freedom@charliekirk.com. This General McInerney. McInerney. Is that right? Is that better? Wait till you hear this. This is amazing information. By the way, everybody, things are happening very quick. I have never seen establishment Republicans defend the president. And we're going to go through Roy Blunt and Mitch McConnell and Pompeo and Ron Johnson. All of them are weirdly harmonizing around this idea that this election's not over. And it all might be because of this. Play tape.
The Obama administration took this system and they put in an application in this SIGINT program called Scorecard. And Scorecard changes votes at a certain point in the voting stream. And if I can, and by the way, the Obama administration used it in the 2012 election in Florida. And so both Obama and Biden are very familiar with this. Now,
Now I want to play cut 23 now, please. Sidney Powell.
If you look at Florida, where things were done right, you can see that that's how the rest of the country should have gone. But they also used an algorithm to calculate the votes they would need to flip, and they used the computers to flip those votes from from Trump to Biden, and from other Republican candidates to their competitors also. I think Doug Collins had the race stolen from him. I think John James had his race stolen from him. It wasn't just President Trump. There were many people affected by this. We have got to fight tooth and nail in federal court to expose this abject fraud and the conspiracy behind it, and get a recount and audits in every place it's needed, which is, frankly, most of the country.
And then cut 8, please.
We talked about the Dominion software. I know that there were voting irregularities. Tell me about that.
That's to put it mildly. The computer glitches could not and should not have happened at all. That is where the fraud took place, where they were flipping votes in the computer system or adding votes that did not exist. We need an audit of all of the computer systems that played any role in this fraud whatsoever. And, you know, Joe Biden had it right. He said that he had the biggest voter fraud organization ever, and he didn't need people's votes now. He would need people later. They had this all planned, Maria.
Now, none of that actually surprises me in the sense that our government is actually trying to rig elections. We rig elections all across the planet all the time, and I don't trust our government at all. What's amazing, Benny, do you remember when the Democrat Party used to hate the CIA and not trust the government?
Yeah, you mean like when we were teenagers? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Those are fascinating. It's fascinating to see the number of times I retweet Glenn Greenwald now and go, yes, absolutely. Boom.
We used to hate Glenn Greenwald. Like 8 years ago, we were told to hate him.
Yes. And now it's like he's one of the few truth tellers out there.
Well,
it does show it shows the power of our intelligence. It shows the power of our intelligence agencies, which are not America. It's anti-America. That's the anti-church. It's the anti-America, these intelligence agencies that are now turning their statecraft on the American people. It's wickedness. It's evil. It gives you a little bit of sense of empathy for countries where they did this and they meddled in elections and
Iran.
They flipped votes. Yes. And they ousted rightful leaders. Mm-hmm. And it gives you a little bit of empathy for those countries. And now you can see this sinister statecraft turned on the American people that fund it, which is fascinating. Yep. We pay for this to be happening to us right now.
That's right. So that doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is, do we have Roy Blunt here? Senator Blunt? So this guy is not one to go pick a fight.
Yeah.
And I want to play Roy Blunt. I want to play Ron Johnson, and then do we have McConnell? Maybe we don't. But we have Johnson and Roy Blunt, okay? Now, we're all grassroots conservatives here, right? Isabel, myself, Benny. We're Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton types, right? We want to fight. We are not Republican establishment types. I'm glad they're in office. That's fine. Great. We got judges, but we want dramatic action. Okay. But when Republican establishment folks start talking like this, pay really close attention because they usually know something. Play tape.
That virtually every predictor of what was going to happen in the elections was wrong. You know, the president wasn't defeated by huge numbers. In fact, he may not have been defeated at all.
Fascinating.
So that's Senator Roy Blunt, who's in leadership of the U.S. Senate. Now listen to Senator Ron Johnson today, asked if he called Joe Biden to congratulate him. It's hard to hear, so I'll tell you what he says after he says it. Play tape.
Senator, have you congratulated Vice President Biden yet?
No.
Why not?
Nothing to congratulate about.
So it's hard to hear, but it says there's nothing to congratulate him about. Does that sound like an election that's over when the head of the Department of Homeland Security and Roy Blunt, who's in leadership, and Mike Pompeo, who's the head of Secretary of State, and President Donald Trump says, wait till you see what comes next? What are these people don't just, it's not like they don't talk. There's something happening here.
Well, I think we've all known that. We know that. That's what we've been talking about all week.
But the fact that they're talking, what's happening here is this actually might be revealed.
What a legacy. What a legacy. What a legacy to create the amount of hatred that was building, and then to ensnare them in their own trap and expose the voter fraud that is on record. Where's that giant pile? The voter fraud that is on record.
Benny, you have to memorize that before the end of the live stream.
What an incredible legacy that would be to expose that system. And then if Republicans start having guts, which you're starting to hear, then to enact sweeping change like national voter ID law, like a full federal audit of voter rolls, and then the modernization of American voter systems with no foreign technology inside of those systems, and then mandatory, like they do in Australia, like they do in other first world nations, mandatory, nonpartisan, both sides approved poll watchers at every poll watching location. Not a football field away, like you saw in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, a mandatory voters watching over your shoulder as you count votes.
So, and these are Republican senators that, quite honestly, they'd love just to get their Senate majority and get on with it. Unless they're briefed on some very top secret confidential intelligence, maybe Dominion was hacked by the Chinese.
Well,
maybe by the Iranians.
Did you hear about Gina Haspel today? Gina Haspel, who does not pay, she is the head of the CIA. She is a very quiet member of the administration.
Do not trust the agency.
I'm not saying trust them. I'm saying, why is she going in and out of Mitch McConnell's office?
And having a 20-minute meeting.
So she's zipping in and out of the office. This is not a woman who just goes and wanders into places willy-nilly. Certainly not the leader of the Senate. And why is she up there? It's a great question.
And so the way that the D.C. Beltway is spinning it is they say Senate Republicans urge Trump not to fire CIA Director Gina Haspel, that she wants to get her voice behind for the stimulus package. Like, yeah, okay, I don't think Gina Haspel is taking a trip from Langley and overseeing all the governments that that we're trying to overthrow to go to Congress. She might have intercepted some information from the agency that there was some infiltration into this from foreign governments. And by the way, we don't say any of this stuff lightly, guys. We are a fact-first show, as you can see.
Obviously.
And, I mean, Isabel is nicely highlighting bellwether counties, all this sort of stuff that we have here. Let's play Mitch McConnell, who's not one to go run into a fight. All of a sudden, fight? Play tape.
And President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
And I want to play the Louis Gohmert clip. He's a congressman, and we just had Congressman Gosar here calling into an investigation to Dominion voting systems. Wait till you hear Louis Gohmert, totally based. Play.
They knew he didn't have to get out and campaign and work like President Trump because the fix was in between ES&S and Dominion, and some of the plans that were in place, or the equipment that they had installed and the software and how it was set up. But I can tell you, unless the fraud is exposed, and that's what's being worked on, then the president will not be able to win. Apparently, the model the people behind this were planning on was that Trump, at best, might be able to get as many votes as Obama did in his best election. And so when it was moving toward pronouncing Trump as the winner and president-elect, he had blown by Obama's numbers. They weren't ready for that. So they had to figure out, how do you come up with enough votes? We're about to lose this thing. So you suspend counting and you go back and work again.
And that's exactly what happened. So now you see a drumbeat amongst establishment Republicans, cabinet officials that are all echoing the same thing, that there's something wrong with what happened in this election. And you know what the fraud is about all of this? The same people that produced a fake election interference scandal, the Russian scandal, are now the ones that are saying there's nothing wrong here without ever even looking to it at all.
They're not even saying there's nothing wrong. They're saying it's impossible to have any sort of interference or false ballots or anything. I mean, the narrative has fundamentally flipped on its head.
And so
from
they
2016
say that the Kremlin was the one that was determining this entire election.
Memes of Jesus arm wrestling Hillary. Will Jesus win? Punch like. That's a Russian meme. If you ever look these up. Can you do this now? Can you look up the Russian memes? You got to see. New York Times published them. Okay.
I don't want to see. I don't want to see my cookies all of a sudden filled with a bunch of
the New York Times
nonstop flights to Moscow. Limited time only.
Published the memes of and the memes were hysterical. As a guy who did tradecraft, my tradecraft is memes, not spying on duly elected presidents. Jesus arm wrestling Hillary. Guys, that was great. Good job. Good job. That really swung the election for Trump. In the meantime, the media is lying about those memes to give cover for the real operation that's going on, which is the actual spying on an incoming American administration.
Correct.
Legitimate spying that was done off of a fraudulent dossier that everyone knew was fake. And that is what I'm talking about when I say statecraft turned on the American people. It is unparalleled, and it'll make you sad knowing that Peter Strzok is now teaching at Georgetown, teaching your children. Oh, there! Oh my God!
I did go to Georgetown.
You learned from Peter Strzok, Stroke Smirk?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's go to the meme. This is an example of a.
That's it.
This is an example of a Russian meme.
You know, this meme
you want
really
Jesus to
influenced
win?
how I voted in 2016.
Is that how?
Directly? Actually,
Isabel,
this is
did you
why
look at
I
this?
chose to vote for
This is
President
As a
Donald
young
Trump.
woman.
what the Democrats said turned it for Trump.
That's it. That's exact. So first off, first question, Charlie, why did you pose in that photo as Jesus? What did they pay you?
The hair looks similar, right?
It does. All you need is a couple more.
I will cut my hair when I get a recount.
Okay.
People say, "When are you going to cut your hair?" I'll say, "Full hand recount and a revote." Otherwise, I'm going to have John the Baptist hair.
So 3 years, a special counsel investigation because of memes like that. Yet today there is where's the stack? There is verifiable
proof.
We
have the dead people stack, we have the voter
verifiable
fraud
proof.
stack, we have the affidavit stack,
we have video footage.
We have the
We have literal
Gabonese
video
foreign
footage.
interference stack, we have the excuse me while I call BS stack, we have the Pennsylvania voter analysis stack.
So that won the election. Jesus arm wrestling Hillary swung the election. But this didn't. This didn't.
In the words of Gen Z lingo, this is really sus. I just have to say. If you don't know what that means, really suspicious, you guys. The fact that they honestly believed a meme like that could swing an entire election.
Sounds like the Democrat Party.
Sus. Word of the day.
I tell you, I would love to make more Jesus memes. Jesus arm wrestling. I don't know why I even try to make political creative content. I just need to have Jesus arm wrestle whoever I don't like in politics.
That's the end game.
Tonight, the president has promised that ballot corruption is going to be exposed on Sean Hannity tonight, is what he said.
There we go.
How
I'll
do
be
you-
anxious to see.
Okay, so the guarantee of all of this is that there's going to be an America after we get through this. Maybe it'll be Joe Biden president. Maybe it'll be Donald Trump. I think everyone is aware of where our bias is. However, how do you fix this? Going forward, there has to be a plan to fix it. What do Republicans, because they're going to be the only people incentivized to change this system, what do Republicans do to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, it's very simple. You have to understand the mechanics of how elections are won. It's number one. So if they're going to ballot harvest, then we're going to ballot harvest. It's that simple. If all of a sudden they're the ones that are... Now, ballot harvesting is legal in a lot of these states where it happens. They're going to do that. We're going to do that. Number two is that if we control the attorney general's offices in some of these states, then we need to prosecute these people immediately, aggressively, and show no mercy whatsoever for the crimes that they committed against our country. It's that simple. Secondly, second or third, is it's long past time for Republicans to stop underestimating the left. Yes. They will cheat to victory. They have. These are the people that launched an illegal intergovernmental coup against us, against our president. These are the people that put Dinesh D'Souza through hell and put him nearly in prison. They went after Steve Bannon. They go after Wayne LaPierre. They went after Roger Stone. They went after Paul Manafort. They went after Michael Flynn. They went after Don Jr. They went after the president and his entire family. Yet Hunter Biden walks free. Stroke Smirk walks free. Lisa Page walks free. Andrew McCabe walks free. In fact, even worse, Peter Strzok is being paid by Georgetown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even worse, Strzok Smirk is now being called a hero on all the television networks. Lisa Page, the philanderer affair woman, gets called like a hero because she leaked in, because she tried to launch intergovernmental coup, and her lover, Peter Strzok Smirk, said that, oh, I will never let this happen at the highest levels of the Bureau. We know what they're willing to do. They're willing to smear and slander Nick Sandmann because he was wearing a MAGA hat with a smile that they didn't like, because he was a skin color that they didn't like, that confirmed this weird, bizarre historical fetish that they have, that there's like a rise of a Third Reich in our country. That's what they're willing to do. They're willing to kick everyone off social media that they hate. They're willing to burn down cities. They're willing to go after 500 black-owned businesses in Minnesota and then go blame Trump for it. They're willing to burn down Kenosha, Wisconsin, and act as if there's nothing to see here. And you're trying to tell me they're not willing to go cheat in elections after what the left has shown us with who they are? And that's my biggest disappointment here, is where was the infrastructure that was waiting for them? Where were the federal agents saying, you know what? Count the ballots. Show me. And so we have to understand the number one takeaway from all this, and I do think that things are happening, and we're going to learn a lot more, everybody, because since when we started doing these broadcasts a couple days ago, boom, has public opinion moved on this issue. Would you agree, Benny?
Correct.
A couple days ago, people were like, it's over, Joe Biden's president-elect. Now all of a sudden you're seeing people like, hold on a second, irregularities and, Benford's Law and all this. Now you're starting to see people really challenge and think, as the great Rene Descartes said, who started the Enlightenment, which helped start Western civilization, I think, therefore I am. When you stop thinking, you stop being, which is exactly what's happened to so many people in this country. They just turned off their brain, like, just tell me what I need to hear. Just tell me what it is. So that's one of the part of the lessons, Benny, is that we need to start believing who the left is, which is they are a dark movement who embrace literature that is dedicated to Lucifer. Rules for Radicals, written by Saul Alinsky. I'll just stop right there.
Well, I think even before that, too, it's time to start asking all the right questions. We're not thinking. We're literally just consuming information, and whatever people tell us, that's what we accept as truth because it's coming from some level of authority, whether that's the mainstream media, the people who run the algorithm on your social media feed. We need to start asking people who can do something about this why there haven't been audits yet, why there haven't been recounts yet, and get involved in the process. And all of us can do that. That doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take being the president of the United States. We can speak up right now.
Well, and here's the role you're playing. Since we started doing this, just our YouTube has garnered 4 million views in just America. How much? You know the multiplier effect to get to senators and Congress people? Our podcast, #1 in news, #2 overall in all podcasts. So when you guys supported us at charliekirk.com/support, you guys send our feed around. If all of you guys just texted this to one person right now, we are going to be able to help finish what we started with this. We're going to keep this drumbeat going nonstop. Because, guys, all of a sudden now you see Lindsey Graham, you see McConnell, you see Blunt, you see Pompeo, you see Gina Haspel. Something's happening here, and this is part of the thing. I want you to imagine a world where this program didn't exist and all of us just went home like the Bushes would have. Like the Bushes are like, oh, congratulations, Joe Biden. You're going to open the borders and, pander to China and go declare war on some poor sovereign nation of which we can't even pronounce right now. We like you.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but 20 years ago, exactly to the day, George Bush was on national television saying we need to count every legal ballot. And we need to throw out...
Can we get a tape of that, please?
We need to throw out irregularities. George Bush brought a massive legal team and a Supreme Court case to throw out irregular ballots.
And won.
And so it makes my blood boil to watch George W. Bush, who didn't lift a finger to fundraise or help Republicans in any cycle for the last 4 or 5 cycles, go out and say Donald Trump needs to accept the irregularities and the fraud that is being perpetrated against him.
That's exactly right.
When I refused to do that on a much smaller scale,
that was like
in like an infinitesimal scale.
Chads, okay?
Yeah.
This was the problem in Florida, okay? That's the problem, okay? That was the problem. We're talking about all of this, okay?
The stacks.
Yeah.
Also.
So let me ask the two of you a question. I came here, and before I came here, on a flight, we're in Arizona right now. I flew here from Washington.
At an undisclosed location.
My home in Washington, D.C. My home in Washington, D.C. I picked up my dry cleaning, and I had to show my ID. I go to Zips Dry Cleaning. It's like $1 to get my suit dry cleaned. I had to show them my ID. It says a big sign. Says, show us your ID or else you don't get your dry cleaning. I had to show my ID twice in that process. Then I had to get in my car, where it's illegal to drive without an ID. It's illegal for me to drive myself to the airport, which I did. I drove to the airport, I got in a parking spot, and then I got on my plane, wherein the government agent, the TSA agent, said ID. Didn't ask for my ticket, said ID. Ran my ID through a machine that said I was on that flight or wasn't. And then when I had to get on my flight, not a government agent, just the person at American Airlines said, show me your ticket, which is tied to my ID. I can't get on the flight without having my ticket, which is my form of identification. So what is more important for the process of my week? My dirty laundry? My getting on a flight to Arizona? Or my vote? What is the most important constitutionally protected activity for me that week? This week, I voted, I got my dry cleaning, and I got on a plane.
Yeah.
What is the most important activity constitutionally that I undertook this week? Well, damn it, it's voting. There's only one of those is constitutionally protected. I don't know how bad the laundry was for John Adams. Probably terrible. It was the 1700s. But not even dry cleaning, not even dry cleaning is considered constitutionally protected activity. Right. Yet I am required by Zips for my $1.30 dry clean to show an ID twice.
Well, we could come up with literally 400 things right now if we just sat here and
How about
started to
renting
list
a movie?
them. Rent a movie. buy a beer at the grocery store. Open a bank account.
Yeah. No, I always loved the renting the movie example because it was so incredibly Stalinistic the way they enforced the ID. When we grew up in America, children did not have Netflix brought to you by Amazon Web Services. They didn't have these massive streaming capacities. You went to Family Video with a fake ID if you wanted to go rent an R-rated movie.
Yep.
Blockbuster.
Ooh, what R-rated movie were you renting as a teenager, Charlie?
Well, okay, so this is
Die Hard.
The important thing, though, to note is
My
that
favorite Christmas movie.
just like everything else in America in 2020, this idea that you need an ID to vote is somehow racist. Everything is racist. Everything's white supremacist. I'm young. It's no secret. I'm the youngest person on our contributor team. I'm 23. I was a sophomore in college when President Trump was elected in 2016. And the next day, everything from that day forward in my college experience was racist. Because I was the Turning Point chapter, I was the Nazi Barbie on campus. That was the nickname. I was that Turning Point.
Spoke.
White supremacist girl.
2.5 years
Charlie
ago?
remembers. I know. Almost 2.5 years ago. That is crazy to think about. And now you're seeing this same pattern of behavior start to happen on campuses. I'm doing lots of events with our chapters on Zoom and in person right now, where everything automatically is racist again. So I want to give you guys a couple examples while we're waiting for some of these clips to pull up, because it's really fascinating to see this cyclical history. But it's not just cyclical, it's exponential, just how crazy all of these claims are starting to get. At Boston University, Ibram Kendi, who's a very, very well-known organizer in the Black Lives Matter movement, author of a book called How to Not Be Anti-Racist, or How to Be Anti-Racist,
This guy's
something
more
along those
racist
lines.
than most KKK members were.
He is a
100
professor
years ago.
at Boston University, and he says that the term legal vote, that term is racist. That term is white supremacist in and of itself, let alone requesting that you have an ID to vote. At Princeton University, an African-American studies professor said that whiteness, sexism, and the patriarchy is responsible for how close this race was. The patriarchy and white supremacy is responsible for
And we
this.
talk about this all the time at Turning Point USA. Please just stop sending your kids to college, everybody.
And if you are a student, video this stuff. You're on Zoom, screen record your classes, pull out your phone in class. I mean, the fact that at Tufts University, they said that the loss of Trump during this election was the perfection of the American Union because there's less white people voting, even though that doesn't make any sense because the president exponentially grew the support of minority communities for the GOP, for Republican candidates that we've never seen before. This is insane.
He did better with black and Hispanic voters than any Republican since 1960. And he won every single bellwether county that has accurately predicted every winner since 1956.
So why not voter ID?
Well, so I don't understand, first of all, how you can be of age to vote and be a successful functioning human being and not have an ID.
So I
you need it for everything
have
else.
two questions about voter ID, okay? The first of which, if you think black people can't get voter ID, you're incredibly racist. That's number one. Like, oh, they can't get voter ID. Okay, you're a racist. Number two, the whole reparations argument, okay? And so For these people that say, we want reparations because we're descendants of slaves. Like, okay, so let me get this straight. You can get your paperwork together to show that you're a 9th generation American descendant of slave, and you can't show an ID when you vote. Like, you can get your paperwork together to show that, you're 10 generations ago, your family was working the plantations in South Carolina, and you can't just show an ID to go vote. Like, okay.
It does seem diminutive to
It
certain
is.
populations to be like, you're not capable of getting an ID.
That's
It's the bigotry of low expectations.
It's saying you need our help. You're not capable by yourself. We'll help you. We feel really bad for you, so we'll help you.
That just seems like such a no-brainer solution, like immediate solution that could be passed in Congress, that could be presented. And I would argue, if you are a member of the GOP or you're a member of their staff or a chief of staff or a legislative director, and you're listening to this right now and you're thinking about what to push that the base is going to love you for 2021 and 2022, regardless of who is president. Truly, it does not matter if it is Joe Biden. It does not matter if it is Donald Trump. The issue of our time is now voter ID. It is now
It's not just voter ID, though.
enfranchisement, the enfranchisement of Americans, because I think a lot of people don't quite understand this. I was in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a week before the election, and I was talking with people up there. This is a Rust Belt area that was wildly depressed under the Obama era. They it hit catastrophic times, and then it came roaring back.
Lackawanna County.
Came roaring back with the advent of Dunder Mifflin, with the advent of fracking.
Real news.
And when you have 50,000 people voting for Trump, which is what happened inside of the Scranton Township area, you have 50,000 people voting for Trump, and you shove 50,000 illegal ballots into one mailbox in Pennsylvania. You have disintegrated and robbed the entire city of Scranton, Pennsylvania, 50,000 Americans of their constitutionally protected right to vote. You have disintegrated an entire city. You vapor like Thanos. You just snapped your finger and the entire city is gone. That's what you do. You cancel them out. You cancel out their dreams, their ideas. These people went and they marched the polls. Whatever you think of COVID, they risked their lives. Whatever, they went and they voted, and then you can, in a snap of a finger, eliminate the entire city of Scranton.
Well, what's alarming to me is we're not even talking about the fact that your vote is the most fundamental aspect of what it means to be an American, that you can participate in this process, that we have a government that was for the people, by the people, that we determine the outcome of these elections, not the elites, not people who are already in office, not people who are on your TV screen every day. The fact that that is just fundamentally changed overnight, literally while we were sleeping, because people were stuffing tens of thousands of ballots into the backs of cars, driving them across state lines, allegedly, using that word over and over again.
The whole show has allegedly.
Whole show is allegedly from the legal perspective here.
That protects us. Allegedly.
How is that not completely shocking to everyone, regardless of who you voted for? And we say all the time, we have for several nights in a row, this is so much more than who gets inaugurated on January 20th.
That's exactly right.
This is the fundamental identity of what it means to be the United States of America and Western civilization.
It is a complete and total attack on the West, is what it is. And the idea of a fair and free election is fundamental towards any sort of decent society. And if you are not able to confirm or corroborate actually who's voting in your elections, it's very important. I wrote this earlier, which is that the more tactical elections become, so the more it becomes about tactics and less about arguments, the more divided the country will become and the less we trust the system. This is nothing more than just gaming the system now. It's like, who do you have staffed where we're able to put the pieces of paper where we need them? None of this election was actually about ideas.
No.
President Trump wanted this to be about ideas. Joe Biden wanted this to be about machinery.
Yes. He did say, you don't have to vote for me I don't need you on election day. I need you afterwards. That's a quote. Fact check. Missing context. But this is a quote that he said.
Correct.
He said it at an event. You have the tape. You can roll the tape. I don't need you now. I need you after I'm elected.
And all
he
of
says
us,
this to voters at a campaign event. Have you ever heard a presidential candidate talk like this?
at a rare campaign event, because all of us were saying for days leading up to Election Day, why are you taking a vacation? Why are you not speaking to voters? This doesn't make any sense. Why would you take several days off? Because he had to.
Isabel, question for you.
The fix was in.
Question for you, Isabel. Have you heard Barack Obama congratulate Joe Biden on shattering his record for the most votes of any man for president?
No, but I have heard Michelle Obama say we should target conservatives and never forget about the complacency that they had in not standing up against racism and not standing up to this COVID-19 pandemic.
Do we have the George Bush clip? Are we even looking for it? So, okay, we're still looking for it.
So it's George Bush arm wrestling Satan, and
that's what decided the election in the Supreme Court, you guys.
You got us, Russians.
Oh, man.
Oh, you got us. How did you know?
So I'm scrolling through Twitter here because as much as I hate this site, it's important to understand what people are saying. The fact that The Bachelorette is the #1 trending subject right now is exactly why we do this live stream, because we need to keep talking about this.
So continue to email us your questions, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. And what we'll most likely do is we're going to adjourn in a little bit so we can watch and see what the president is so excited about on Hannity.
Yeah.
And we'll keep the stream going, and you guys can stay queued, and then we're going to kind of replay the tapes of that and everything that's going on here. So, Benny, what has this taught you about the Republican Party? What has this taught you about kind of the party that we are and we're headed with the Trump movement, you know, whether we win this or lose this?
The Republican Party has an opportunity right now to expose, a generational opportunity to expose their political enemies as the frauds that they are, and it has never, ever has your enemy been laid more bare on its back with its chest exposed, like for you to properly, like, take the stab. This fraud is so egregious. It's so out in the open. The censorship is so blatant. The nature of the fraud is so egregious, and the solution so present, so prescient. I mean,
what just like great diction.
You're sitting there with the solutions that could preserve our democracy for another generation. I have a small baby; she's 3 months old, and you could preserve this country for her. And all it's going to take is Republicans with guts to put their foot down and say, "This is the seminal issue of our generation, and we will protect voting rights, enfranchisement today, enfranchisement tomorrow." This is what we fought the Civil War for. This is what we had in 1865. This was our country. We wanted enfranchisement, Voting Rights Act. This is 1964 all over again, the Civil Rights Act. This is us protecting your future, because there is nothing more sacred in this country. The only thing that separates us from the dictatorships is our right to free and fair elections.
Yeah.
And so if you lose that, then we are nothing less than a tin pot dictatorship. We might as well be in North Korea.
That's exactly right. Continue to email us your questions, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. We want to take some questions here. People say they're asking a lot about this USPS worker. Could we play that again, please, of the Richard Hopkins? It's absolutely hard to believe of how these federal agents act like thugs against citizens because they've been deployed by the Democrat Oversight Committee. Watch this. This is our own government. This guy should be arrested for what he's doing. Play tape.
They were grilling the hell out of me.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm kind of pissed. I feel like I just got played.
And I heard him say to the supervisor that they messed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what did they mess up on? And he told the supervisor that they had postmarked one of the ballots for the 4th instead of the 3rd, because they were supposed to put them for the 3rd.
And so let me make good on that promise right away. Okay, this storm is getting crazy. Right? And it's out of a lot of people's control. And so the reason they called me in is to try to harness that storm, try to reel it back in before it gets really crazy. Okay?
I understand.
Because we have senators involved, we have the Department of Justice involved, we have
Trump's lawyers team's gotten a hold of me.
I'm not, well, I am actually. I am trying to twist you a little bit, because in that, believe it or not, your mind will kick in.
Okay.
We like to control our mind, and when we do that, we can convince ourselves of a memory. But when you're under a little bit of stress, which is what I'm doing to you purposely, your mind can be a little bit clearer. And we're going to do a different exercise too to make your mind a little bit clearer. Okay?
Good to go.
So, but this is all on purpose.
Roger.
I'm not scaring you, but I am scaring you.
It seems like they were trying to make me distrust y'all. And at the same time, it kind of affected, but at the same time, I was like, no, these guys have had my back since the get-go. So that's why I continued.
Do you think these federal agents have your back?
At this point, no. Hell
Do you
no.
think these federal agents are really interested in investigating fraud?
Honestly, I don't think they are.
And in fact, you heard Weisenberg tell a supervisor they were backdating the ballots to make it appear they'd been collected on November 3rd. You still stand by that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good for him.
I mean, that is complete and total thug government.
Yep.
I mean, that is no different than how the mafia would operate. It's just the mafia would never talk that way because they would be afraid that somebody else would be listening to their conversation. I'm not scaring you, but I'm scaring you.
Mm-hmm.
When they went in to interview Michael Flynn at the White House, it was an entrapment operation. And they sat him down and had Peter Strzok himself had a very similar, if I'm remembering this correctly, Peter Strzok himself had a very similar conversation with Michael Flynn, where he warped and asked him these questions in order to get him to answer a specific way, in order to get a specific outcome, in order to get a specific headline out of Michael Flynn and get him fired, because they were so terrified that Michael Flynn knew the intelligence infrastructure, knew the Iran deal back to front, would be able to decouple and rip the tank treads off of what Obama had built quicker than anyone else. Remember, Michael Flynn was fired from Obama. And the way they got him was this. This is remarkable. They should have, by the way, shame on, let's put shame where it belongs. The Trump administration should have never allowed that meeting to happen.
Right.
They should have had counsel present. Michael Flynn should have never been meeting one-on-one with FBI agents. But this is the tactics. This is precisely the tactics that they use in order to trick a very wise, smart, and innocent man, Michael Flynn, into saying something that they could eventually run as this was misinformation.
Entrapment.
It's entrapment.
And so the Democrat House Oversight Committee has wrongly said that Richard Hopkins has now recanted what he said. That is not true.
They wanted the headline.
Well,
That's
I find
right.
this so interesting.
They wanted that headline.
Because the loudest voices on the left side of the aisle are saying that conservatives and Republicans currently in office, including President Trump, are somehow manipulating this idea of the government and the highest powers that be in government, like the DOJ, to refuse to have a peaceful transition of power, that it's all manipulative, it's happening behind the scenes, it's scary because all of a sudden the government's on their side. What we're seeing is very, very clearly the opposite of that.
So what's really interesting is that the Democrats, the Michael Moore types, they used to be people that were skeptics of the agency and of the Bureau.
Yes.
Now they just decided, let's just take it over and run it like our own gangsterized Chicago government.
But haven't they done that with every institution?
Yeah,
that challenge them? Academia,
that's
entertainment,
liberals versus leftists.
media, big tech. They just take it over. There was a time when Mark Zuckerberg, you and I all of us would have cheered in the streets for the way Mark Zuckerberg talked about the protection of political speech on both sides on Facebook.
Yeah, but he doesn't do it.
Well, this was before the left gets to you. Before the left comes in and just hammers you with New York Times headlines and like make sure that when you walk into the opera at the Kennedy Center, you're hissed at, right, instead of applauded. This is what they do to John Roberts. This is how they get you.
Well, this is what we talk about all the time with Turning Point and all the other work that we do in the social movement of conservatism, is that politics is downstream from culture, and you have to reach people where they are at culturally, because all of a sudden it bleeds into culture if you don't reach people where they're at now, if you embrace complacency. That's what we're seeing all across our society.
This was the horror of Trump for them, Isabel.
Yeah.
Like knowing that you and I do this professionally, the horror of Trump was that he crossed cultural boundaries.
That's right.
And that he was able to tap into the celebritizing of the political office that not even Barack Obama could reach, levels on not even Obama could reach. And he was able to suddenly weaponize his celebrity for the right. And that is the largest power. That's the biggest power in America.
Well, and he talks to people in a language that they understand, in a way that they understand. I mean, for goodness sakes, this president decorated the White House with memes on poster boards during a digital summit at the White House.
We are not worthy. I was at that summit.
There you go.
Were you at the summit?
I was not. I
We are
was
not
still a
worthy.
student
There
at
were
that
memes,
time, but
memes all over the White House.
And that, it's silly, but it does. It represents something so much bigger than one guy in office. It represents this idea of culture and people and ordinary citizens versus the establishment machine.
And if the Republicans take this opportunity and smash once and for all the corrupt, rotten core of the left the institutional left, then they will have an opportunity to win working class,
That's right.
minorities, women, which you are already seeing
Well,
trending
already
towards
saw that
Republicans.
this year.
We are now representative of the party of the minority worker.
Well, and President Donald Trump built a multiracial middle-class party.
Yes. Mhm.
When the Republican Party used to be like, we're not the country club party. Get me another bourbon at my country club. Like, no, you actually were the country club party before Trump.
Yes.
Like, you were Mitt Romney, and you were the Rockefeller Party, and you were the Bush Party, and you dominated the suburbs.
Yes.
You got enough of the rules because you said their guns are going to be taken away, but the rules didn't vote in big numbers. And you had this, like, pseudo kind of, like, shady deal with the Democrats. Like, you take the inner cities and do whatever you want with them. Stay out of our suburbs, and we'll take care of the rules, and we'll see who wins the elections. And next thing you knew, Republicans were so out of touch with working people.
Yes.
And working people were like, where do we go? They're like, oh, our parents like Kennedy, so I guess we like Kennedy. And, Biden goes to the unions, and that's fine. And no candidate thought to actually go to the muscular class in our country, people that actually have to work with their hands. There's 100 million people that work with their hands every single day. 100 million people. Those are electricians. Those are carpenters, HVAC.
Yep.
They work in service industry. They're truck drivers. Do we have the truck driver clip here, actually? There might be a national truck revolt, by the way. The muscular class is going to start. I think it's in the lineup. And the muscular class is going to start pushing back on this country. And they should.
Well, they already are, frankly, and culturally what we're seeing, especially on social media, feelings about TikTok aside, you're seeing thousands of videos on TikTok from people who work in construction,
I don't know what the truckers are doing on TikTok.
They're
That
so
does not make any
excited,
sense
though,
me.
to share their excitement of this president, to share their excitement of America and what we were founded to be. All of a sudden, you're seeing all of these new ways that people are finding to express their voice in unique ways, and that's why protecting their vote is so important, because that's where their voice goes.
So breaking right now from one of our listeners, Sandy, who did what we told her to do, to contact Pennsylvania legislatures and say, do not seat electors.
Nice.
Pennsylvania Senator Katie Muth. Is that a Republican or a Democrat? We're about to make her
Let's look.
famous. She is a Democrat, obvious. It would be a shame if everyone watching this contacted Katie Muth. She said, Dear Miss F., one of our listeners, thank you for your concern regarding Pennsylvania's election process. The senator understands that in order for true democracy to be upheld, free and fair elections must be a guarantee. Our office is not aware of any credible instances of voter fraud in Pennsylvania or any issues with corruption regarding the ballot counting process. Current allegations of voter fraud regarding mail-in ballots are simply not true and unfortunately have caused unnecessary chaos and circulation of misinformation. Further research has consistently shown that voter fraud in any method of voting is rare. All a bunch of nonsense. Then explain to me, Senator Muth, why there was a 1,774% increase in voters over the age of 90 in Pennsylvania. How is there 95% turnout in Philadelphia? Why did Philadelphia stop counting votes? Biden had no ground game, no enthusiasm. No one liked him. They were voting against Trump, and yet he did better than Obama in Philadelphia and he did better than Hillary in Philadelphia. How is it that Trump did worse in Philadelphia, but better right across the border in New Jersey? Literally right across the border, Trump did better. Philadelphia, he did worse. Where are the answers to all that, Miss Muth, Pennsylvania Senator Katie Muth? These people are so incredibly dangerous, the demagoguing they are doing to our country. And they say there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. So I did this on my show earlier, and I want to tell you what's so dangerous about this. So, Benny, when I say there's zero evidence of widespread voter fraud, let's deconstruct this sentence. You've heard that before, right?
Yes.
Isabel, you've heard that?
Oh, yes. Sentence diagramming. Who remembers that?
So sentence diagramming. Zero widespread. That's weird. You have a objective number, 0, and a subjective statement, widespread. How do you measure widespread? How about 182 pages of voter fraud? How about 1,000 dead voters? Would that be widespread? Well, it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? And so widespread, it's a stupid number to use. It's non-scientific. It's unmathematic. So instead, how about 1% voter fraud? I can show you 1% voter fraud. And if you looked into it, you would find it. There's no evidence because it'd be like saying this. In my day-to-day life, I just don't see money laundering. I just don't see it. Therefore, it must not exist. In my day-to-day life, I just don't see child sex trafficking. I don't think that exists. I don't see women being sex trafficked. That must not be there. Oh, no. Go get a criminal investigative unit. And guess what? President Trump starts looking at child sex trafficking. He starts to find it. You don't find what you don't look for.
Also, I'm just having such a hard time understanding why everyone's saying we should just completely sweep this under the rug because we don't have credible evidence of widespread fraud. I'm sorry, I'm upset by the idea of just one ballot being fraudulent, that we took someone's right away to voice their unique vote in this election to be a part of this process. That bothers me because that's not who we are as the United States of America. And yet all of a sudden you need to prove that half the country has fraudulent ballots in order for this to be taken seriously. That doesn't make sense to me.
Go ahead, Benny.
What's the difference between me and you? Like, I'm not talking party registration. What's the difference between me and you? If you think that Joe Biden is the elected president and me sitting here confused at this process, what's the difference? The difference between me and you is that if a Republican in salt red Texas, in the reddest county of Texas, in West Texas, won, and a single dead Republican voted for him,
it would be nationwide news.
I would be upset. I don't care what the New York Times says. I would say, deduct that, find out who did that, and punish them.
Yeah, that's right.
In Salt Red Plains, Texas, I would say, wrong. Guy won by 50,000 votes to 2. I would say, is a single one of those ballots fraudulent? Wrong.
That matters.
Find it, hunt it down. Investigate. It doesn't matter that that is not even for the office of the presidency. It doesn't matter that I don't live in Texas. It matters that it's my party that is doing the fraud, and I find that brings shame upon me. And that brings shame upon the party that I support. And therefore, it's worth the consequences if they throw the guy out of office or if they jail the person who's responsible for it. It's worth the consequences because a fair and noble election is what holds us all together as Americans. And there's something actually more pure and more important than getting your guy in. And that is the preservation of this country.
And the preservation of the system that gives us the leaders to govern our country.
Correct.
Let's do a little throwback. Look at George W. Bush saying exactly what Benny said he was saying. Play tape.
Nice.
Voters who clearly punched preferences in other races on the ballot but did not do so in the presidential race should not have their vote interpreted by local officials in a process that invites human error and mischief. All Americans want a fair and accurate count of the votes in Florida. And I believe if there is a fair and accurate count of the votes in Florida, we will prevail.
So why do we give you that opportunity, George W. Bush, and you don't want Donald Trump to have that opportunity? Let's go.
Donald Trump should work on his pronunciation of mischief.
Well, George W. Bush talks very slow. Let's go to the trucker revolt here. Look at this. Play tape.
A lot of truck drivers, a lot of people who are kin or have something to do with trucking, oil field, one way or the other. As of now, the word is November 29th. November 29th, we park them and we don't move. I know it's pretty close to Thanksgiving or right around that time, but November 29th is the day we take this country back. Spread the word. It's our time. We say what happens. Y'all be safe out there. It's about to get real.
Trucker TikTok. What did I say?
Hard to hear. I think he was saying he was going to revolt or rebel or something, right? Is this one easier to hear? I think so. Play tape.
April, when truckers were the most important people in the world, because we were bringing your toilet paper and your gas to heat your house. Everybody was howling at night for the first responders, because we've been out here in the middle of this pandemic this whole time, bringing you shit. And how do you thank us? You closed down the restaurants that we eat at. Okay, we can deal with it. Then you close down our rest stops. Now in Wyoming, they're talking about not even plowing the highways this winter because they can't afford it. And to top it all off, 70 million of you guys voted against the trucking industry, against first responders, against oil and gas. We ain't gonna forget this shit. You already have, but we won't.
And that's exactly right. The muscular class is pushing back.
I like that, the muscular class.
Me
Did you
too.
coin that?
No. Victor Davis Hanson did. We've been using it, but it's very good. Email us your questions, freedom@charliekirk.com. In just a couple minutes, we are going to adjourn slightly. We want to give away a couple signed copies of the MAGA Doctrine right there, freedom@charliekirk.com. Without Googling, if you could tell me who the 8th president of the United States is, we'll give out 5 books to those people. If you could show that you're subscribed to the Charlie Kirk Show, so all you have to do is take out your phone, type in Charlie Kirk Show to your podcast provider, hit subscribe, and email it to us at freedom@charliekirk.com. Isabel, do you have a trivia question for the next 5 MAGA doctrines?
Ooh,
it has to be
trivia
American,
question.
and it can't be international.
What president's dog was the only one to have their own press secretary?
It's really good. If you can answer Isabel's question, that's another 5, but you have to show you're subscribed to the Charlie Kirk Show without Googling, okay? This is a trust system. Benny, what's your trivia question for the next 5 signed copies of the MAGA Doctrine?
Which president's wife sat on the lap of Mr. T for Christmas?
And if you can get that question correct without Googling, and you show that you're subscribed to the Charlie Kirk Show, email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com, and we will select 5, the first 5 people that get it correct, freedom@charliekirk.com.
There's photographic evidence.
And I want to thank those of you that are supporting us at charliekirk.com/support. Brandon from Iowa, thank you.
Yes,
Jason
Iowa.
from Australia, thank you.
Wow, that's awesome.
Maya from New York, thank you. freedom@charliekirk.com and charliekirk.com/support. Okay, we are going to select some of these winners of our books, and you guys might hear there's going to be breaking news. So we're going to keep the stream going. We're going to take a couple-minute break here to watch what is happening right now with Sean Hannity. We are not able to stream it for copyright reasons, but as soon as that airs, we have all the cuts from that. We'll be back here. So we're going to adjourn for a couple minutes, everybody. Just keep the feed going. And if you want to just keep us going, we are able to do what we do when you support us at charliekirk.com/support. Some people say that George Washington's wife sat on Mr. T's lap.
Got me. What? Okay. All right, Martha. Martha might have been. Who knows? You can't. Who knows?
So I think we have 1 disqualified.
I know for a fact this is real.
These people are definitely Googling at this point. Okay.
I went through a certain presidential library's archives and found this very rare and special photo, and it exists, and it's real.
Only the meme person would be able to.
Someone
find
did just
this
get it right.
photo.
I'm not going to say. Someone did get it right.
Really?
Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, charliekirk.com/support if you want to support us.
Photo.
We will be back in just a couple minutes once this breaking news is aired. We want to make sure that all of you have an opportunity to see that. We also don't have the rights to air it due to copyright. So we'll be back in a couple minutes. Just stay right there. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Charlie Kirk here on the Charlie Kirk Show stream. We got Benny Johnson.
That's really good, Charlie.
It's a lot of alliterations.
Long month this week, as we've been saying.
Isabel, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
We watched the Hannity program, and Sean does a great job, but we kind of covered a lot of this here, and we'll continue to be covering it. So
I watched Newsmax. I don't know.
Benny, tell us what's on your mind.
I watched Newsmax, the only cable news outlet that has not called the presidential race, and for good reason. It is so important right now, especially in a universe that has proven that disinformation can be funneled directly to the front pages of any corporate or owned media entity to follow creators, independent creators, truth tellers, and people who are in the arena. So often, you'd be shocked. I live in D.C. I've lived in D.C. for 15 years. You'd be so shocked how Democrats walk the halls of Congress without a single person asking them a question. They are never pushed. They are never asked. You would watch the Trump administration and assume that everywhere people are just screaming at their politicians, asking them tough questions. Not true. So now is the time to follow channels like Charlie Kirk's, to follow Isabel. I don't know if she has a YouTube, but I know she has an awesome Instagram.
Yes,
and she's
YouTube
going to have a lot more cool stuff coming up here. Turning Point
soon.
USA. Yeah, and it's so important to follow people that are not owned and operated, who cannot be told by the powers that be, you will report this, you will say this, you will repeat this misinformation. You are seeing it now in places that you thought were safe, places you thought were conservative, places you thought had your back. A lot of people are feeling stabbed in the back by a lot of voices who you thought were on your side. People sneering at you and people laughing at you. And in moments like this, when your country is on the line, and we've covered this, when your country is on the line and when you have these seminal moments, you need places that tell the truth. That's why these live streams are doing so well. That's why it's so important to follow Charlie and the work that we're doing, and we deeply appreciate.
I think we're seeing a complete and total recalibration of how people consume information in our country.
Correct.
I think that we're seeing a complete and total change in how people actually are, who do they trust and where do they actually get their information from.
Correct. And you listen, when you're telling the truth, it's amazing how when you're being dishonest and when everything you're saying is dishonest and it's built on that, it's grotesque. It doesn't last. It can't stand up. There's biblical scriptures about building your house on the sand that you can go back to whatever iteration or parable you want, but the truth is it can't last. That type of dishonesty never lasts forever. This is the kind of dishonesty that you saw in the Soviet Union. When all press was owned and operated by the state, they were made a laughingstock of, and eventually it collapsed. And you will see that inside of our corporate media edifices and inside of these institutions. You'll watch the slow collapse happen, because nothing so dishonest or grotesque can stand for long, especially in a free country.
So let's get those trivia questions answered. But first, I want to answer one question. People say, are there any more Arizona drops coming tonight? And the answer is we are not sure, but there have been a couple drops recently. There was another Maricopa County drop that was 56.4% for Trump. That was another 5,291 ballots. I don't know how many ballots are left, but it's not looking great for Trump currently without a recount. Biden leads Trump by only 12,813 in Arizona. Okay, which dog had its own press secretary?
Okay, please correct me if I'm wrong, world, but I'm 99% positive
Oh,
it was FDR's Scottish Terrier that had his own press secretary from the museum.
You have to know the answer.
I remember this. No, I remember. My favorite museum in D.C., which is now very sadly closed because they didn't have enough funding.
Not sad.
The museum
Not
had a whole...
Oh, that place was awful.
The press do not need their own museum to themselves.
We've been talking all night about how the disintegration of true and honest media is right before our eyes. That museum was all about what free press was supposed to be all about and what it historically had been, what it used to be, not what it is today. So that's important to note.
Point.
They had a whole exhibit on first pets, and I remember reading FDR's dog had his own press secretary, the cute little Scottish Terrier.
So Benny, who sat on Mr. T's lap?
Nancy Reagan. Come on, guys.
I saw the picture.
Nancy Reagan said Mr. T's dressed as Santa Claus Mr. T is dressed as Santa Claus. He's at the White House. Nancy Reagan, I think she's kissing his forehead.
It looks like it.
Yeah, and they're there by the Christmas tree in the White House, the Reagan administration. I can't say the year. One of you sleuths can find the year. I don't know it off the top of my head, but she is sitting on Mr. T's lap. Mr. T is dressed as Santa Claus, but macho Santa Claus. He's ripped off his sleeves, his Santa sleeves, and he has massive gold chains. And Nancy Reagan's giving him a kiss. And maybe the greatest thing to ever happen inside of the White House. Maybe ever.
Iconic, really.
Truly. They should make a statue of that. They should just dip that in gold and bronze and just make a statue. That would solve all class and race relations in America.
Please continue to email us your questions. We're going to take some questions now. freedom@charliekirk.com. freedom@charliekirk.com. Here's a good one, Isabel. Someone says, I am a student in college and I'm being censored for my beliefs. What should I do?
Keep speaking up. Do not let the left silence you guys. I've lived it as a college student for 4 years, working with Turning Point USA as a chapter president. I do it professionally now as a spokesperson for our organization, doing this in media and on social media. The left will go to any lengths necessary to call you the most extreme name under the sun and completely censor you, whether that's online or in person, like we're seeing with this new Trump Accountability Project. That's all in an effort to keep you silent. So do not give in to that. They're terrified because you're speaking the truth. We just talked about how when you're saying lies, it's grotesque, it's obvious, but the same is true on the other side of that coin. Truth has a ring to it, and we love to say that all the time. You recognize it when you hear it. So you guys keep speaking up. Don't back down, and you're never alone. We have your back with Turning Point USA.
We have to continue to expose this fraud, and when it comes to what's happening on the campuses and what's happening in schools across the country, it's more important than ever to speak out and fight. And, that's exactly why we do what we do at Turning Point USA. And if you guys want to get involved, it's tpusa.com. Okay, Benny, we're getting a lot of questions. People are wondering, who are you and what's your day job?
Oh, my God. Who am I and what's my day job?
People are saying, where'd you find this guy? And by the way, they're wondering why you're blending in with the background. All they see are your limbs and your face. You wore the worst thing you possibly could have worn.
Let's meme it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, meme it. Okay? Meme it. I want to see the memes. I am Chief Creative Officer here at Turning Point USA. All of the fun viral videos and content and memes that you see are generated by a team of incredible content creators that I get the extreme pleasure of working with and honor of working with the best creative team in the industry. We also, I host multiple shows. And really love making memes myself, and so that is what I do. It's hard to explain, especially at Christmas parties when you're talking to my parents' boomer friends who just look at me like a confused Cocker Spaniel, going, "What are you talking about, young man?" But truly, the left cannot meme, and I cannot wear a shirt that doesn't blend directly into the background.
I'm seeing lots of floating head comments. So.
Yeah, if I
was
Benny,
you're the floating head.
If I were,
and you wear your earpiece perfectly.
Black shirts matter, and so I'm not going to back down. I love this shirt. I got this for $5, I think, at H&M, and you can't bully me.
The left can't silence the floating head.
That's exactly right.
Someone has a question from Argentina.
Wow.
Facundo Orozco. What a great name. They do
awesome.
names better in South America than we do here. There's a couple languages
cultural
in region.
Appropriation. Never.
Of course it's cultural appropriation. And
don't pronounce names like that. Is that how? Do you go to an Argentinian restaurant and go, "I'll have the barbacoa, fajita"?
What's wrong? I've always been.
Do you say that to the waiter?
I've always loved the idea of cultural appropriation because you're actually complimenting that culture.
Okay. All right. Sure.
No, really?
Sure.
I never understood.
Okay.
They say, okay, so don't celebrate the culture. Is that what they're saying?
I think you could be Elizabeth Warren's press secretary and be like, no, she was complimenting Indians all these years.
No, I think it's nonsense where it's like, okay, it's Cinco de Mayo. Okay, we all dress up in sombreros. It's St. Patrick's Day. We all act like we're Irish. Okay, great.
All right, what's this question from Argentina?
I don't know if it's as much of a question, but after we've given Media Matters everything they need for the evening, from Facundo Orozco, here we do have some kind of CNN. There's a lot of misinformation. This question's for you, Benny. What do you do if you can't find news you trust, and answer without saying Newsmax?
Ooh.
Do you Charlie Kirk show, obviously. And the next Charlie Kirk show, the next episode of the Charlie Kirk show, I've got a sneak peek. It's Charlie Kirk going through the Taco Bell drive-thru saying a chalupa and a gordita.
Oh my goodness.
If you can't find, obviously, millions of Americans are deeply distrustful of institutional corporate media who act like sycophantic DNC press secretaries. And they are paid to lie to you. And so the press has been inverted. Our intelligence agencies were there to protect us and spy on our foreign enemies. Now it's the opposite. It's foreign governments working with them to spy on us. And the press we pay the press to hold other people accountable, to hold our powerful accountable. Now it's the other way around. The powerful are paying the press to shut us up, us the people. And so you cannot go wrong by finding specific accounts of truth tellers. Tim Pool is a wonderful truth teller. Dave Rubin, non-corporate. I think that Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Dan Bongino, wonderful podcast, must listen to. Clearly, like Jordan Peterson has a massive following as well. These are all people who are not sponsored or controlled by corporate media entities, and they are free to tell you what is on their mind. Is what's on their mind right? Do I agree with it 100% of the time? Absolutely not. All those people I disagree with at certain times. However, you're gonna hear a real, and you're gonna hear a true and a raw, and typically a very tuned in. I know, especially the guy sitting next to me. No one is more tuned into the Republican base and the conservative base in America than him. And I would argue, in closing, that this is the best way to do media. The best way to do media is to get rid of this idea that I am a independent arbiter of information and I have no bias. Bull. Of course you have bias. Of course Chris Wallace has bias. The best way to do presidential debates and the best way to do media is to say, hey, I'm a conservative. And so, presidential candidate, I'm going to ask you questions that represent the 70 million, 100 million Americans that I am speaking on behalf of. And then this, my lib colleague over here, Chris Wallace, right, Kristen Welker, whoever, they're going to represent the liberal side of you. That is the most honest way to do media, is to say, hey, I'm a conservative. So these are the cares and concerns of me, and if I'm factually incorrect, then that's wrong, and I'm going to apologize for that. That's the way to do it.
So, a lot of you are asking us to cover this story on Gateway Pundit. I love Gateway Pundit. They do a good job, the Hoffs. Breaking exclusive analysis of election night data from all states show millions of votes either switched from President Trump to Biden or were lost using Dominion and other systems, allegedly. So, we've reported on a number, it says here in the Gateway Pundit, we've reported on numerous events in the 2020 election which are being referred to as system glitches in the media. Last night we provided with another glitch, this time in Wisconsin, and this story goes on to show that in Wisconsin, it's a breaking exclusive system glitch also uncovered in Wisconsin. Reversal of swap voters removes lead from Joe Biden. This according to the Gateway Pundit. And you look into this, it's very compelling, and we know that this happened already in Michigan. And so look, we're hearing about canvassing and all this. How about we bring in the feds and we start to look into this like it's a foreign intelligence operation?
Fascinating.
I mean, it'll take an afternoon to find out really what's going on here. It's Dominion Voting Systems, which was in partnership with the Clinton Foundation. It was pushed into many different states across the country. Dominion Voting Systems. It's very, very important we get to the bottom of this. And so we're going to look into this story a little bit more. And it says when this one is confirmed, it will result in a 19,500 vote gain for Trump, making the Wisconsin race a total toss-up. And now we're going to find out, the veracity of that. But it sure looks like it's very compelling after it happened in Michigan with 6,000 votes that were changed and a 30% change. There's also a really good website called everylegalvote.com. Everylegalvote.com. It's really good. It has these different tabs of the current status of the state, what would happen without voter fraud. And it goes to show,
cool.
It's really cool. It shows Donald Trump the winner. It's really cool. That without voter fraud, Donald Trump would have won 307 electoral votes. Everylegalvote.com. And it's really well resourced.
Can I see that?
It's really well sourced, I should say.
What do we got? Oh, Minnesota, okay, and Arizona. Okay.
And they do a great job here. And so, also, it's important to realize that there's so much information happening right now that the media does not want to cover because a lot of the activist media, in fact, a majority of the activist media, would vastly prefer just moving on and coronating Joe Biden. What we are doing right here on this program, which is not a lot of people are doing this at all, is actually diving deep into these stories. And by the way, a lot of you that email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com, we're seeing these stories. We look into them. Some of them are true, some of them are not. But then we're able to report on them when we look into it and we do the data analysis right here. Some people are asking, does Dianne Feinstein's husband own a part of Dominion? I haven't been able to confirm that. We're still looking into that. We've gotten a lot of questions on that. I want to thank some of our supporters. I want to thank the Hardy family from Idaho for supporting us. I also want to thank Teresa from California for supporting us for $20 right here. Freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. Benny, how can people follow you on social media and support you?
Benny Johnson, that's my name. Just search me on all the accounts. Hopefully, I'll be the one who pops up. If not, it's a Russian bot, and you better click like on Jesus Arm Wrestling Hillary.
Or Mr. T and Nancy Reagan.
Yes.
Isabel, how can people follow and support you?
Isabel Brown, and I have to say I find it really awesome. We were talking about how cool names were in Argentina. Our names are Isabel Brown, Charlie Kirk, and Benny Johnson. So it's really easy to find us on social media. We don't have very complicated names, you guys.
Every morning we're going to be here from 12 to 2 covering this news. There's some new breaking news we're looking into tonight that we're not able to share with you yet. So that's going to come tomorrow morning and tomorrow night. Till then, if you guys want to support us and the work we're doing, it's charliekirk.com/support. We are going to keep the pressure on. When you have McConnell, you have Roy Blunt, you have Pompeo, all these people all of a sudden saying maybe if Trump won, there might be something to this. We have to keep the pressure on everybody. That's what this program does. You are in charge. We're here because of what you guys are able to do. And email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you tomorrow. God bless.